Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all this morning. Thank Andy for giving me a chance to speak today. I told him, I said, hey, I need to do a lesson here real quick, and I have to actually do it before the first of the month, so I was asked to give a talk, and they need the outline due by Saturday, so that is obviously after the first Sunday of the month, so I need to make sure everything I have here makes sense and flows well. So any comments or critiques you have, I am more open than ever about it this morning. Hopefully the content is right. That part I can be pretty confident in. I'm reading from the same book you guys are. So, but anything else, I always appreciate your feedback and comments. So this morning, we're going to talk about being like Barnabas, Andrew and Phillip. I'm going to do my best to not mispronounce his name, as Mom chagrins. And so when we think about this, we think about who these men are. So we're going to start with Barnabas. Who is Barnabas? Who is this guy? Well, fortunately for us, compared to Andrew and Philip, he's mentioned a handful of times more. So we're going to use the Bible to figure out who is Barnabas. So we're going to start in Acts chapter 4, 36 and 37. Thus Joseph, who is also called by the apostle Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, a Levite, a native of Cyprus, sold a field that belonged to him and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. So who's Barnabas? Well, first of all, Barnabas' name isn't Barnabas. It's the first thing we should learn. It's Joseph, who was called Barnabas by the apostles. Now let's think about that. He earned basically this nickname, which means son of encouragement, which means he acted in such a way that he basically got the nickname of someone who encourages. That'd probably be like you guys calling me Jonathan the song leader, right? Like Jonathan the person that sings loud, I guess, is the other option. He carries himself in such a way that his actions basically lead to how he's been known. How he's remembered for all time is being someone who encourages. He leads by example. He sold a field. We hear about a lot of people who do that in the first century, but it wasn't just that. It was that he was so well known for his actions and his behaviors that he earned the title Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. Then we can go to Acts 9, 26 through 28. I tried to put most of the verses up there, but the longer they get, the smaller they are, so feel free to turn your page if you can't read that, because I definitely can't read it back there. And when he had come to Jerusalem, he attempted to join the disciples, and that he being Saul, and they were afraid of him, for they did not believe that he was a disciple. But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles, and declared to them how on the road he had seen the Lord who spoke to him, and how at Damascus he had preached boldly in the name of Jesus. So he went in and out among them at Jerusalem, preaching boldly in the name of the Lord. So here we have another instance of Barnabas here. And here we have him vouching for Saul, who later would be called Paul. And what we see here is that he's seeing someone who is trying to preach the gospel, and their past has caused them, a little bit of a problem with doing so. And he's taking and he's vouching for him. He stood up for him. He stood up for another brother in Christ. And I think that's important. We need to do that too, because we all know people who may have stumbled somewhat in their past, and they're looking to do what's right. And sometimes they just need someone to help guide them there, or help vouch for them, help get them into situations that they can succeed. Then we can move to Acts 11, 22 through 30. And like I said, the longer these get, the smaller this font gets, so probably best for you to turn here. The report of this came to the ears of the church in Jerusalem, and they sent Barnabas to Antioch. When he came, he saw the grace of God. He was glad, and he exhorted them all to remain faithful to the Lord, steadfast in purpose. For he was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and of faith. And a great many people were added to the Lord. So Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul. And when he had found him, he brought him to Antioch. For a whole year they met with the church and taught a great many people. And in Antioch the disciples were first called Christians. Now in these days prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch, and one of them named Agabus stood up and foretold by the Spirit that there would be a great famine over all the world. This took place in the days of Claudius. So the disciples determined, everyone according to his ability, to send relief to the brothers living in Judea. And they did so, sending it to the elders by hands of Barnabas and Saul. That's a lot going on there in that verse. But if we look at what Barnabas is doing here, first, he's being sent. And we can see how his attitude, how his demeanor, how he himself had an impact on the congregation that he was sent to. That he was this type of man that was so filled with the Spirit, he was having such a positive impact. But not only that, when he got there and he was doing all this great work, he looked around and kind of thought, do you know what? I think that this would be really good for Saul to come be here with me and doing this with me. So he went and got him and brought him along with him. Because that's the kind of man he was. And then we can go to Acts 12:25. And Barnabas and Saul returned from Jerusalem when they had completed their service, bringing with them John, whose other name was Mark. And it also goes on to Acts 13, where they're going to be talking about this missionary trip that they're going to take, and eventually John Mark is going to leave them. Then we find Acts 15, and it says, after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brothers in every city where we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. Now Barnabas wanted to take with them John Mark, but Paul thought best not take with them one who had withdrawn from them in Pamphylia and had not gone with them to the work. And there rose a sharp disagreement, so they separated with each other. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. Here we have the separation of Barnabas and Paul. Paul wants to be going and doing the work. Barnabas is ready to join with him, but thinks that John Mark needs to go as well. Well, Paul thinking, why would we want to bring someone that just left us behind? But here Barnabas isn't letting the past get in the way of the future growth of both the church and John Mark. Sometimes people aren't, you encourage someone to do something. Sometimes they're not fully ready for it. Sometimes, they've bit off more than they can chew. And maybe that's what happened with John Mark. He left and he wasn't ready, but he's wanting to go again. And Barnabas' attitude is, if someone wants to go, let's bring them with us. And that's how Barnabas acts. And that's the attitude he has towards those wanting to serve. So how can we be an encourager like Barnabas? Well, the first question is, what is encouragement? What is the definition of encourage? You can think about it if you just break down the word. You have courage and in, which means encourage, right? Literally means putting courage into something. Some definitions are give support, confidence, or hope to someone. Give support and advice to someone so that they will do or continue to do something. Or help or stimulate an activity, state, or view to develop. What does encourage mean? It means to help grow someone, help build someone up. How can we be an encourager like Barnabas? Well, we can do the work. I think one of the things that often happens with us is we get bogged down by everything that needs to be done. We have a list of 1,000,000 things to do, right? Or we can take a look at it as a macro view and say, what? This world is a problem. There's a lot of changes we need to have done here. And we kind of view it as this whole giant problem. And then that just bogs us down, and then we get overwhelmed by the workload and we decide to do nothing. But we can look at Barnabas and see the example from him of how he took that on. Because back in the day, it was the same problem that we have now. The world needs saving. What did Barnabas do about it? He decided he was going to go and preach the word to the world. And we can see he did it with his actions. He went and he traveled to Antioch. He traveled around with Paul on the missionary journey. And he proclaimed the word at a time that was probably the most unwelcomed. The time where persecution was at an all-time high. And I think about Barnabas, he's just willing to do it. And how that can sometimes be a great motivator for us as well. We see someone just willing to do something. If we can think about maybe the example of John Mark. They brought John Mark, and they're going to go back out again. Maybe John Mark sees they're going to go out again, and he wants to give it another shot, right? We can be so encouraged by that. We can be encouraged by seeing someone grow. We can encourage someone by us doing something that needs to be done. And that's really where it all starts. You can only control what you can control. So if you see something that needs to be done and you do it, it may have not gotten done in a long time, but after someone sees you doing that, they may want to join in with you. We can think about, I really like new hymns, so I spent several years forcing new hymns down your throat. And now we seem to really like singing new hymns, right? We say, oh, hey, I get sent ones that say, hey, we should try this one now, Jonathan, right? And I do my best to try to get as much of that as I can. But this concept of just being encouraged by it, we see that it's something that can help us grow just from taking in single action. Someone can start to, attempt a Bible class for the first time ever, and that's encouraging for other people to see that there's a motivation there. But also at the same time, it's required of us. If we think about it, Hebrews 10:24 through 25 says, "And let us consider how to stir one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." Oh, I did not copy that one in, just the verse. This is why we run through these things. So there we have this concept, and hopefully you guys turn to it, this idea that in Hebrews he's telling them how to consider stirring one another up to love and good works. Just doing things that help build people up rather than tearing people down. And that's how we can be an encouragement. That's how we can be an encourager like Barnabas. Another part is seeing good / opportunity in others. It's not this concept of just, sometimes they show in movies of this person who's just, oblivious and always just hoping for the best in people, and then they get taken advantage of. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about seeing good, seeing an opportunity in others and how they can serve Christ. Maybe it's someone you meet in the store or someone you work with, and this concept of, they have a lot of personality traits that, if we can get them into Christ, I can see how some of the skills they have would be really beneficial to the work we have here. Or we can think about it in our own home congregation, and we can think about, so-and-so, is pretty good at this, or he does this at his job. Why don't we try to get him involved more, and so that we can have more growth there. But also at the same time, it's really easy to be cynical, to not be trusting of others, to, if someone has, let us down, or, we were counting on something to get done and it didn't get done, we can always say, do you know what, we're just not even going to bother with that. We're not going to worry about, so-and-so who we entrusted them to do this thing, they let us down, we're going to just never bother them again. That's not how Barnabas acted. That's not how Barnabas saw the work needing to get done. We have so many things going on in our lives. Who knows why it didn't happen? Who knows why we were let down? But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't give others a chance, again, to do the work. And I think about it at my job as well, in this kind of mindset of, I sat down with my career counselor boss person. The names are complicated in my company. It's a mess. But talking about, hey, you should go and do thing X, because that'll be a really good experience for you. So we had an intern the past 2 weeks, and I was given responsibility of the intern so that it would, get me better set for, being more in charge and taking more responsibilities of the team. And this is a way that encourages growth in the company. So that's the attitude, that's the mindset the company has. But that's also the mindset that we should have as Christians. Just say, hey, hey, Josh, I see that, you sing a bit. Let's make sure you lead more, because I think he's led more now than he ever has in his life with song leading, right? We get someone engaged, we encourage people to do these things, and maybe they need voluntold, maybe they need a little nudge, but it's not like you're nudging them off a cliff. It's you're nudging them into a place that's new, and you're going to be surrounded by people who are going to care and support you, and you're going to grow. And the other thing is being a source of encouragement. Barnabas' name came from the life he lived. He didn't earn the name son of encouragement by being cynical and tearing people down. He didn't get the nickname from being negative all the time and complaining. He got the name because of how he lived. He had his actions reflect what was going on inside of him. And I think that's a good motto for us to think about as well. Be reflective on our actions. Ask ourselves, do my choices build people up or tear people down? Because if we think about every decision we make in that manner, we can have a better chance of being this encourager like Barnabas. So now we can move to Andrew and Philip. I know this is a little, hard right turn here, but I promise you we'll summarize it and bring them together at the end. Who are Andrew and Philip? Well, unlike Barnabas, there's not as much said about Andrew and Philip, so I encourage you to turn to John 1, 40 through 51. It's a little bit of a lengthy reading, but it's going to tell the story of Andrew and Philip. One of the two who heard John speak and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which means Christ. He brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas," which means Peter. The next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Philip said to him, "Come and see." Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were lying under the fig tree, I saw you." Nathanael answered him, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are King of Israel." Jesus answered him, "Because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these." And he said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." This is a pretty long reading and just about all we get about Andrew and Philip, but we can see by their actions that they heard the word, they heard Christ as he was just starting off his ministry, and their first reaction was to go bring someone with them and say, "Hey, I've heard this great news. Let me go tell someone else. Let's have someone else join me." And so that's what we're going to talk about here is how can we lead others to Christ? Well, we can share it with others. We can think about the Great Commission, Mark 16, 15, and 16, where Jesus tells us to go all throughout the world. But we also have 2 Timothy 4, 2 through 5. It says, "Preach the word, be ready in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with complete patience and teaching, for the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but have itching ears. They will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions. It will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off into myths. As for you, always be sober-minded, endure suffering, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry." We have to tell others. That's the first step, right? If we're going to lead others to Christ, we're going to have to tell them about it. And the reason why I've chose 2 Timothy 4 here is because it's talking about just being ready for it at all times. And I think that's important. And if you can see in the reading we had in John 1, they were looking for the Messiah. They were ready. We talked about it in our Daniel class here. The Israelites at the time knew Christ was coming. They knew when to look, and when Andrew and Philip saw that this must be the Christ, they were ready, and they were ready to tell others about him. Us now, we have to be ready whenever to talk about Christ. We have to be ready to talk about why we have this faith, why we have this hope. Hopefully we're acting like Barnabas in a way that we are the son of encouragement, that people are going to ask us, why do you have this faith and hope? Why are you have this mindset when the world can seem to drag us down and be depressing? So we have to be ready for it. That's the first way we can bring others to Christ. The second, and this one kind of goes in as probably step one of the two steps there, is to teach others with our actions. If we think about how we're going to get opportunities to actually share with others, to teach others, to preach the word to others, they're going to have a reason to want to listen to us, and probably a reason to ask why we are the way that we are. That's one of the best ways to open the door, is by our actions. So we have Matthew 5:14 through 16. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Here Jesus is talking about this concept of being light. If we think about light and darkness, you have a light in a room. It's going to illuminate things. It's going to show things. It's also going to provide a path. We've talked about before that this idea of a lighthouse along the shore. It's going to be a path. It's going to draw people in. If you've ever had a power outage in your house, you quickly realize how much you depend on light at night. Even if you know your house pretty well, you're going to end up stubbing your toe some way, somehow, while you're trying to navigate the house blind. And we're going to glorify God with our actions. And that's how we're going to lead others to Christ. We may not be able to convert them. We may not be able to get them baptized. But the concept is they need to see something in us, and it might be the only opportunity that they have to see Christ or learn about Christ. And it may only be in our actions. Same thing with 1 Peter 2, verse 12. Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. Same concept here. He's talking about your deeds are going to glorify God. But also, 1 Peter here is also giving a warning as well. People are going to look at you. People are going to not be happy with how you are acting. There are different types of reactions to the word and to the light. And some people want to stay in the darkness. Here Peter is warning, saying, the world is going to try to discredit you. And it's only by your actions and you maintaining this conduct that's going to be honorable. People can have a reputation, and I can say, hey, I go into my work and say, do you know what? I can't work Sundays. But how much is that, really being shown if I'm going to act like every one of my other coworkers, if I'm going to use the same language as my coworkers, if I'm going to say the same jokes as my coworkers? What does me going to church on Sunday tell about me that all my other actions are, they're providing a counterexample? Because the world is looking for a reason to not be faithful. It's looking for a reason to not follow you, for you to not be an example. So you have to conduct yourself in a way that you can be an example to others, so that when the day of visitation comes, they're not going to be without excuse either. You're going to say, everywhere I went, I proclaimed the gospel. I proclaimed my faith in Christ by my actions. And I tried my best to lead others to that because they could see in me, they could see Christ in me. So let's wrap these two together, because there are some overlapping concepts with both of them. Well, with all three of them, with Andrew and Philip and Barnabas. They have a zeal for God. We think about Barnabas, we talked about this concept of he lives his life in a way that he earns the nickname the son of encouragement. He sold the field and gave the possessions. A lot of other people did that too, but he was pulled out because he also had a lot of other things that ended up going on. When it was time to go to Antioch, he went. When it was time to go and preach to the known world, the Roman Empire at the time, he went. He had a zeal. He was willing to go and do those things. He had the blessings, and he took the opportunity. The same with Andrew and Philip. They knew they were looking. And they saw and said, this must be the Messiah. We need to go and we need to act immediately about that. I need to go tell my brother, look, we found the Messiah. And that goes to the next point about all three of them. They share their faith with others. We talked about this a little bit on Wednesday night, I believe, but this concept of if we're going to focus on spiritual things, if we're going to focus on spiritual concepts, are we sharing them with others, or are we keeping them to ourselves? And this is where Barnabas, Andrew, and Philip all, come together of the same mindset. We can think of Barnabas as an encourager. We can be like Barnabas, be an encourager. We can be like Andrew and Philip. We can lead others to Christ. But what do both of those traits have in common? They involve others. That their faith wasn't just isolated into their body. They incorporated others. They made sure that whatever they were doing to glorify God was being felt by others. That it wasn't them just thinking about, well, my soul's saved, I don't have to worry about other people. Their primary focus was, how can I get other people to where I am? How can I get other people to see Christ? We found the Messiah. How can I get other people, to be comfortable to preach the gospel? John Mark, I know you fell away the first time and you went back home, but we're going to go again. Why don't you come with me? Right? And we can think about how we can apply that to our lives. Are we including others in our actions, in our walk with Christ? Are we thinking about others? Are we going to be like Barnabas? Are we going to be like Andrew and Philip? At this time, as tradition in the United States apparently, we offer an opportunity for others to come, and maybe they haven't started their walk with Christ. Hopefully they've heard the call. Maybe they've had their own Andrew and Philip in their life that have led them to Christ, but they haven't fully finished. In the Great Commission, it talks about go and teach and baptize, because that would be the next step, is to live faithfully. So maybe you haven't done so this morning, and you haven't started your walk with Christ. Or maybe, you've kind of fallen away, right? You've maybe gone home like John Mark did, and had some weakness, had some struggles. Because the one thing that the book, the Bible, teaches us, it's not about this concept of once you're baptized, life's easy. The concept is there's going to be struggles, there's going to be growth. So it might not even be that you've fallen away, but you're just struggling with something. You're struggling with your faith. Fortunately, we have this time set aside now so that here at Westview we can encourage you, we can help strengthen you, we can stir you up to love and good works, we can build you up. So if you have any need of the congregation, please let it be known as we